gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
My dear brothers and sisters, we hear in our gospel reading today a parable, which is the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the groom. But there were 5 who were foolish and 5 were wise. Foolish for those who did not take enough oil, while the 5 wise were wise enough to bring extra oil. And here, my dear brothers and sisters, deriving the idea that when we say we got to be prepared, we got to be prepared, which means that there must be a foresight. Then there must be a kind of external indicators that we are really prepared and wise enough. In which, my dear brothers and sisters, we are once again reminded that our preparedness is seen with our concrete responses into our day-to-day spiritual activities. Preparedness is not only seen as an expression coming from one's mouth or ideas coming from one's mouth. Preparedness is not only a kind of thinking or expression, but it has to be seen concretely in our day-to-day life. Preparedness here is more on living our life meaningfully, and that we have also to be spiritually prepared, and that we must live our life sacramentally. We hear the Word of God, especially we live the Word of God. In which, my dear brothers and sisters, at times, for so many of us responding to this invitation only in the level of concept, in the level of idea, on a level of expressions, but failed to show in the concrete day-to-day living. Perhaps the conviction is still not that deep. Perhaps they are in the situation of like bargaining or shall we say it's like the conviction is not that deep for the very reason that they don't still have this belief of this judgment, and that is we are accountable at the end of our life. And we are being inspired by today's liturgy and also saint of the day, who is Saint Monica, the mother of Saint Augustine. And we may say that Saint Monica is considered not to be full, but wise enough, because she had prepared and make sure that she had enough oil. And this oil is, in fact, she had nourished her life with the word, with prayers, with pious life and activities, a religious mother for that, and that has made the conversion of her obstinate husband and also her son Augustine. And we have to recount the life of Saint Monica for 3 decades, for 30 years. She had been praying for the conversion of her husband and of her son, Agustin. And through the Bishop Ambrose, and through the guidance of the Bishop Ambrose, and through her fervent prayer and tears, and she won, and she was able to convert, especially her son Agustin. Which is, my dear brothers and sisters, we are being inspired by Saint Monica that she did not live a life of foolishness for the world, but she had lived a life of being wise, and the wisdom comes from doing the will of God, praying, and most especially, she is an example of a mother who would always think of the good of her son, of her family, and that her life lived in prayer and total trust in God. My brothers and sisters, we are invited once again that let us be wise. In the true sense of the word, that wisdom comes from our knowledge, our wisdom comes from our secret fear of the Lord, our fear of the Lord, and our wisdom comes from our nourishment in the word of Christ. And we are once again reminded that let us not be foolish, or let us not be fools, in which foolishness in our gospel today would speak of this, that we don't actually put into life, concretize our faith, and most especially nourish our life with the Word and doing the will of God in our life. My dear brothers and sisters, in fact, Saint Monica is the patron or patroness of all mothers, because we know that there are a lot of mothers like Saint Monica, also crying, praying fervently, consistently, praying for their sons and for their families, for the conversion of their husband, for the conversion of their sons and children. And here we have Saint Monica inspiring all mothers that we know our prayers, even our tears, will be answered by God in His time, in His grace. My dear brothers and sisters, let us be inspired by Saint Monica. In her simple ways, she has become wise, and that is, she has lived the word, and also she has fulfilled, and she has also lived the word and faithful to the word of God, and she has actually put the word of God into life.